Introductions later. You'll be hearing from our Senate Council and Senate Fiscal staff. We'll also be hearing Senate File 40, as well as you'll hear overview from the D commissioners, Commissioner Grove. However, our new commissioner, Commissioner Rukavina, has a 1 p.m. appointment, so we are going to have her present first. With that, Commissioner Rukavina, please come to the table, which you are there, and you can begin your presentation.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman Champion and members of the Jobs and Economic Development Committee. For the record, my name is Ida Rukavina. I have recently been appointed by Governor Walz to serve as the Commissioner of the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. I was born and raised on the Iron Range, and it is my honor to now lead this agency that has such a strong impact on the people and the region that I love. Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation is a regional economic development agency established in 1941 by Governor Harold Stassen and the legislature. It's 82 years old. The agency was created to diversify the economy of a region that is largely dependent on a natural resource-based economy, primarily iron mining. The agency's mission is to invest resources to foster vibrant growth and economic prosperity in northeastern Minnesota, to enhance livable communities, maximize collaborations and partnerships, and to strengthen businesses and worker education. Here on this slide are the values that we hold dear. These are our agency's core values, and they're the principles and priorities that guide our organization's actions. And this here is the service area of the Iron Range Resources. It's a very large portion of northeastern Minnesota, as you can see. It's called the Taconite Assistance Area, and it's a region defined by Minnesota Statute 273.1341, in which the agency is authorized to expend monies. This service area is determined by the boundaries of school districts containing unmined or iron ore deposits of specified valuation, taconite plants, or electrical generating plants that supply electricity to taconite operations. The area covers the greater portion of northeastern Minnesota, minus Duluth, and its 3 iron ranges, the Mesabi, Vermilion, and Cuyuna iron ranges. It includes all of Cook and Lake counties, most of St. Louis County, and portions of Itasca, Crow Wing, and Aitkin counties. And it encompasses 13,000 square miles in northeastern Minnesota, 53 cities, 134 townships, 14 school districts, and 4 tribal nations, including Bois Forte, Grand Portage, a portion of Leech Lake, and a portion of Fond du Lac. This slide here has our taconite production tax, just some of the history from 2014 through 2022. The Department of Iron Range Resources is funded by a local taconite production tax that's paid by the mining companies on each ton of iron ore pellets that are produced. This tax is paid by mining companies in lieu of property taxes. And the production tax is levied on taxable tons, which are the average tons produced during the current year and the previous 2 production years. This 3-year averaging eliminates some of the peaks and valleys of the downturn of the mining industry. And prior to the agency receiving its funding, dedicated amounts of that tax goes directly to local governments, schools, and counties. And here you can see the 2022 distribution of taconite production tax, which was $109,952,894. Of that, the majority went to cities, counties, and school districts, $45,926,045. And then the property tax relief, miscellaneous, was a little over $11 million. The IRRB agency received over $42 million. The Taconite Economic Development Fund, which is a fund that goes directly back to the mining companies, received a little over $9 million. And then there's some small portion that goes to the Hockey Hall of Fame and the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools, which is another state agency. So of the portion that goes directly to the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, the agency receives $7,964,000. Then we have a portion that goes into the Taconite Area Environmental Protection Fund. That provides the funding for the grants that serve our businesses and communities. Then we have the Douglas Johnson Fund, the Higher Education Fund, Education bonds is $2,730,834. With the school consolidation fund, that's $6 million. And again, the mining reinvestment that goes back to the mines is a little over $9 million, for a total of $51,840,023 that the agency oversees. So this is our advisory board, which is new this year with changes. So we have, as you can see, Representative Ben Davis, Senator Eichhorn, Senator Farnsworth, Senator Hauschild, Representative Igo, Representative Lisselgard, Representative Scraba, and then we have an open position that will hopefully be appointed soon. This board consists of the state senators and representatives that contain specifically 1/3 or more of the residents that reside within the agency's service area. And so that's why it has changed with the census. And the additional senator that is in the shaded area, that will be appointed by the Senate Subcommittee on Committees of the Committee on Rules and Administration. The members of the board are appointed in January of every odd-numbered year, and they serve until January of the next odd-numbered year. And the advisory board must meet at least 2 times per year to review the actions of the commissioner. Minnesota Statutes 298.22 Subdivision 1A includes that legislation for the advisory board. And so due to the population loss in 2020 with the census, that is partly why our Iron Range board reduced numbers and went from 9 to 8. And the board must annually approve the agency's budget. In addition, projects that are submitted by communities and businesses and that are supported by the commissioner are presented to the advisory board for review and consultation. And the advisory board then may make recommendations or modifications to the projects. And just for in the past, the IRRB board has had up to 13 board members, and now we're at present at 8. This is a graph of our full-time employees. Right now, we have 43 employees, 3 vacancies, and the average length of employment is a little over 16 years. Our number 1 goal is for businesses to invest in northeastern Minnesota. And how we do that, we have business development loans and we have grant programs. Our business development programs are designed to diversify the economy of northeastern Minnesota. Partnerships with economic development entities, financial institutions, businesses, and other funding sources support and help create jobs in northeastern Minnesota. During the past 2 years, the agency provided 31 flexible, custom, low-interest loans to businesses that are relocating or expanding in the region. The loans totaled $36.8 million, and they generated a total project investment of $504.5 million. Most of the businesses to which the agency provided loans were in the manufacturing segment of the economy, and those loans were used for modernizing equipment, building and land acquisitions, and growing or sustaining operations. Our second goal is that communities invest in their foundational and social assets to ensure quality of life. The agency promotes and invests in community development through a number of grant programs that strengthen northeastern Minnesota. We work directly with local units of government, the cities and townships, and tribal governments and nonprofit organizations to support projects that advance community vitality and growth. The agency supports projects that leverage a number of funding sources so that community assets are improved on a much larger scale. Here is an example of our grant programs. We offer a variety of grant programs that help communities invest to ensure quality of life for all residents. Everything from broadband to culture and tourism, from infrastructure to residential redevelopment, and from downtowns to our regional trails. During the past 2 years, the agency provided 326 community development grants. The agency's investment of $43.85 million leveraged a total project investment in the region of $374.55 million. Those infrastructure funds were used to improve, replace, modernize community foundational assets such as sewer, water, electric, transportation, and broadband. The region's businesses, homes, and schools gained greater access to service that meets the state of Minnesota's broadband statutory speed goals of 100 megabytes per second up and 20 megabytes per second down. Community development funds also assisted local businesses with energy savings and downtown building rehabilitation. In addition, community social assets were improved, such as trails, parks, recreation, culture, and the arts. And our third goal is that workers have the education and training to meet business needs. Workforce continues to be a barrier to regional economic growth, a challenge that is not unique to northeastern Minnesota. The agency supports workforce programs that produce skilled workers to fill in-demand jobs and provide training for incumbent workers. So in our workforce development, we have grant programs. The agency collaborates with business and industry through our regional educational institutions to strengthen career exploration programs, customized workforce training solutions, and to promote career pathway programs that encourage non-traditional students to enter high-demand careers. We have programs like the Empower program, tribal training programs focusing on welding and CDL training. The agency also partners with Minnesota North College to provide skilled trades training in order to upskill incumbent workers and help develop job-ready workers to fill job openings. This slide is about Giants Ridge, which has a $55 million annual economic impact. The agency owns Giants Ridge Recreation Area. It's managed by a management company called Guest Services, which manages all Giants Ridge operations, including our golf, ski, rental, retail, concession, and facilities. Giants Ridge is utilized by approximately 130 high schools across the state of Minnesota, specifically those with alpine ski, Nordic ski, or golf team. And each year, Giants Ridge hosts events resulting in nearly 3,500 Minnesota school athletic visits and 135,000 facility visits overall. The facility provides our local citizens, students, and other visitors access to quality recreational opportunities and amenities that improve their quality of life. We have the Ranger newsletter that comes out every couple of weeks, every month. You can sign up. We would welcome you to sign up to get some of the information about current events that we are working on or programs that we have in the community. And we also have our website that provides additional information to our business, community, and workforce programs. You can visit that at minnesota.gov/IRRB. And I want to thank you for the time to present today.
Well, first of all, thank you so very much for your presentation today. And I guess you are accustomed to hearing everyone talk about the greatness of your father. I had the opportunity to serve with him. Tommy Rukavina, he was a wonderful person, and so we will forever remember him. I'm looking also at my good friend, former Senator Jeff Hayden, so we would always comment on the Ranger walkout. So whenever there was something that they didn't like, but they also have very colorful vocabulary as well.
Yeah.
So,
Northeastern range vocabulary.
So welcome. So can you talk a little about what are some of your visions and what you see as some challenges and opportunities and how we might think about the IRRB and anything that we can do to enhance the quality of life for individuals who live on the range?
Thank you, Chair Champion. Fortunately, Commissioner Mark Phillips, who recently retired, was in place for quite a number of years, I believe 8 years, really built a strong foundation for me to come into as commissioner, really focusing on our communities, our businesses. Throughout the last number of years, we have expanded manufacturing businesses. I'm really proud of some of the work that we've funded, including ASV and Halion and Mountain Iron, which is the nation's second largest solar module manufacturing plant in the nation. Really something to be proud of. As the commissioner of the IRRR, I want to continue that focus on supporting our small businesses and our manufacturing businesses. And look at actually some of the new technology that's coming with some of the changes. We have had federal investment, broadband. Some of those broadband investments will be really great and help our citizens, both businesses and education, and our students. Some of the challenges that we have are, our agency is directly funded by production tax, so that's the current mines that are operating in the Mesabi Iron in the Mesabi Iron Range. So there could potentially be challenges if there is another mining downturn, or if some of those operations stay idled for a number of years. We will see some changes to our funding, and in terms of again supporting the programs like the economic jobs that we're doing and supporting our workforce, I think will continue the path that Commissioner Phillips did.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Draheim?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for stopping by this morning, and it was great to have our little chat. Look forward to working with you this session, and thanks for being here.
Chair Champion, Senator Draheim, thank you.
Any additional questions? Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, quick question, and I was just coming in, and like everybody after being on interim, I need a little bit of a refresher course. So you said the taconite production tax is averaged out over, was it 3 or 5 years?
Chair Champion.
Commissioner?
Yeah, it's an average of 3 years.
Thank you.
Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And can you tell me how is production looking right now? What's the current state?
Commissioner Rukavina?
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt. Currently, there is one mining operation that is idled. North Shore Mining is currently idled and has been for a number of months. So that will impact some of the production tax that will be, some of the production ore that will be coming out. But, and in the future, I will say that, there's another operation that is looking at a limited ore body. So there are 2 operations that could potentially have some changes.
Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, if I may just have at least for this time, just the chance to follow up, because I'm going to ask a clarifying question. So
Absolutely. Senator
the
Pratt?
one that potentially could idle, is that Hibbing Tac?
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, correct.
Thank you. And my understanding is that there's an effort to look at expanding the leases. Can you give us an update on where that is and potentially what you and the administration are looking at to do, since we've got about a year ahead of us before that most likely happens?
Commissioner Rukavina?
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, it's a little out of my purview to handle that. Our agency more so redirects the production tax, and I think it would be a different agency, like the DNR, that maybe has a little bit more understanding of where those leases are at.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, and I think this is directed more to you and maybe just a thought to keep in your mind, but we do look at the IRRB as an agency to diversify the range economy. And this is certainly, and to deal with, help us find solutions for the when during the booms and busts, so to say. And that was the impetus of my question, and I'm hoping the Commissioner can come back later in the session and maybe give us a sense of where we're at with those mining leases, because I think that's extremely important for us to get those going so that we don't have an interruption of operations up in the mine, and again, impact hundreds, if not thousands of workers along with that. And so I understand that you deal with the production tax as your funding. The charge, again, is to make sure that we have a diversified economy to be able to withstand the ups and the downs, and I'm hoping to hear more of that later in the session.
Commissioner Rukavina, anything you want to say to Senator Pratt's declaration?
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, thank you. I'll definitely can come back again later in session and talk more about that. I appreciate that question.
And certainly, we know, Commissioner, that you are welcome. You and I had a chance to talk. One of the things I hope that you would talk briefly about is when you think in terms of North Star, which is one of the mining companies right now that's idle, it's my understanding not only do you have immediate impact on workers, but I think there might be a concern as to how that idleness will impact the Iron Range in the future. Can you talk a little about that?
Certainly, Chair Champion, thank you. When the mine is idled, it impacts obviously the workers who may have run out of unemployment, but it impacts those towns and communities. So North Shore, the mine is in Babbitt, the production facility is in Silver Bay, and in fact, you'll hear later from some of those communities with the unemployment bill that I think is coming up. It impacts directly those workers, those families, which are very high-paying jobs, very good health insurance benefits, but it also impacts those communities directly, the individual cities, and then broadly impacts the entire taconite assistance area with potentially less funds going directly to the agency, to the cities, counties, townships, schools, school districts. So it is a major concern for us.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other additional questions for the Commissioner before she has to leave? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I wanted to wait until the end, maybe not a question, but just more of a comment. When I was in your chair, I had the chance to work with Ms. Rukavina's predecessor, Commissioner Phillips. I got to say, he was great at bringing me up to speed on the role of the IRRB. He and I developed a very good relationship. Commissioner, I'm looking forward to working with you as well. This is a unique agency that we deal with, but just really wanted to take a quick moment to congratulate former Commissioner Phillips on his retirement, and that he and his wife have a long and healthy time to enjoy their retirement.
Thank you for those kind words, because I believe that is the sentiment of this entire committee, those who know him and those who don't know him, right? One is we are looking forward to having that continued robust relationship and very insightful relationship, because it's important for all Minnesotans to do better. So I want to make sure that we are focusing on the Iron Range like we're focusing in the Twin Cities and in suburbia. It is important for this committee to be very thoughtful about Minnesotans and how we can lift those boats, right? How can we make sure that we're doing all that we can? And later we will hear from Senator Hauschild, who has what would be considered a remedy to sort of help the workers in that area going forward. Any other questions for the Commissioner before she leaves? Commissioner Rukavina, thank you so very much. And if you have any final words that you want to say to the committee, now's the time. Commissioner.
Chair Champion, thank you. Members of the committee, it's a privilege and honor to serve in this role, and I look forward to working with all of you, and thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. So, committee, what we did is we needed to make sure that the commissioner would have an opportunity to have enough time to present to us before she had to leave to go to another another scheduled meeting. So I deferred introductions until now. So we're going to do introductions now, because I think it's important for not only the people who are in this room to get to know who sits on this committee, but also for those who are also joining us online. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to do introductions, and I'm going to start with Senator Hurd. Senator Hurd, will you start us off, and can you go around the table and please let us know your name and your role at the Senate and anything you want us to know about your district, briefly. Senator Hurd.
Senator Fong He, represent Eastside St. Paul, the number District 67. Pretty much east of the Highway 35 here is Eastside St. Paul, and I'm had the honor to represent them for a decade now. It's used to be home for 3M, Whirlpool, and Miracle on Ice, Herb Brooks, but now Sunisa Lee. Thank you, who's an Olympic gymnast champion, gold medal.
Thank you. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Eric Pratt. I represent Senate District 54, which is most of Scott County in the Southwest Metro, the communities of Prior Lake, Shakopee, Jordan, and it's a pleasure to be back on the committee.
And the vice chair for this committee is Senator Muhammad, so we will give her space now. So Senator Muhammad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everyone. I'm Zaida Muhammad. I represent Senate District 63, which is South Minneapolis and a little bit of Southeast. And that includes Minnehaha Falls, Lake Nokomis, and parts of Lake Street. Excited to be here with all of you.
And I think we have two staff folks on this side who are some of the best here in the city, the Senate. So just make sure I get my $20 before you leave, right? So Fiscal, Hannah Noldner. There it is. She has like 3 names, so I usually get them all mixed up. So Hannah.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Hannah Grunwald-Noldner, and feel free to refer to me as just Miss Noldner on committee. Keep it simple. I'm the fiscal staff for this committee from the Senate Council Research and Fiscal Analysis Office. So happy to help out with spreadsheet numbers, budget questions you may have, or fiscal note questions you may have.
And Senate Counsel, Carlin Doyle Fontaine.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members, I'm Carlin Doyle Fontaine. I'm Senate Counsel for this committee. I also staff the Labor Committee. And so if you need any amendments or bills drafted, or you have any questions about it, subject matter within the jurisdiction of this committee, please feel free to contact me. I look forward to working with you.
And our committee administrator is none other than Tom Melton. Tom Melton, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm the new committee administrator. Very grateful to be here working with Senator Champion. I think we have a great committee, so looking forward to working with everybody, and nice to be back at the Senate.
Alexis Voner, who is a little nervous about introducing herself, so we're going to provide her a little support.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Alexis. I am the CLA for Senator Champion, who I'm very honored to work for. And this is my first year working on the official side, so I'm super excited.
Thank you so much. And our ranking minority member is none other than Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair. Rich Draheim, my district runs from northwest to Jordan, all the way down to Des Moines. I'm kidding, to Iowa. So it's a very long, narrow district. I'm a small business person. I have had the fortune to serve on this committee since I came in 6 years ago, and look forward to working with the new chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Eric Putnam.
My name is Eric Putnam. I'm the senator representing District 14, which is the greater St. Cloud area, which includes all of St. Cloud, Waite Park, the good parts of St. Joe, and Haven, and a small part of Haven Township, and all of Minden Township. This is my second term in the Senate, my second term on the Jobs Committee, and I'm eager to do the cool work for Minnesotans.
Senator Gustafson.
Hello, I am Heather Gustafson. I represent Senate District 36. There are 9 cities in there, but it is largely Vadnais Heights, White Bear Lake, and Lino Lakes. White Bear Lake has one of the most beloved small town, downtown feelings, and yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful district, probably the best in the state.
Thank you so much, Senator. And thank you, Senators. I am Senator Bobby Joe Champion. I am going to operate as your chair. I represent Senate District 59, which encompasses North Minneapolis, the North Loop, portions of downtown, and also St. Anthony, Maine area. I took on some of the district of our wonderful majority leader, Carrie Disick, and I'm very happy to have that wonderful Senate district. I like to say it is the best district, but I know that we all will say that around the table. But what I think is special about this committee, and I've been on this committee for a while, is because we really have the unique opportunity to really look at solving problems and moving our great state forward when we think in terms of workers and businesses and those who live, work, and play in the great state of Minnesota. So now that we've done our introductions, I'll now have our terrific Senate Council and Fiscal staff do short presentations to orient our work, because I think it's important for us to understand our jurisdictions and any accounts that we have, and before we get to Senate File 40, which I'm really excited about us to get to shortly. So I will start with, who's going to go first? Okay, go ahead. Ms. Fontaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I believe in your packets you should have a jurisdiction list available, and you will note that on the bottom of this document, it still says draft as of 1/3/2023. So this document, there's a Senate-wide jurisdiction list that is posted, will be posted on the Senate website once it's official, once all the dots, the i's are dotted and everything. But for now, it is a draft document, and what you have is just only for the Jobs and Economic Development area jurisdiction. So contained in this document will be the state agencies that are under the purview, some other groups under this jurisdiction, confirmations and jurisdictions. Do you have a copy of it?
So, Ms. Fontaine, we don't have a copy, so let us get a copy for everyone,
Okay.
if you don't
I
mind.
am very sorry. Does everyone have a copy of the spreadsheet? Okay, well then maybe we can have Ms. Noldner do the spreadsheet.
We'll start with the spreadsheet, and then we'll go to the jurisdiction. Thank you so much, and we'll
Wonderful.
get that document. Thank you. Ms. Noldner.
So, Mr. Chair and members, in your packets, you should have a summary spreadsheet and a more detailed spreadsheet. The summary spreadsheet is just what I'm going to walk through today. It kind of a condensed version of the budget, whereas the detail is more for your information throughout as we go through the session. You can see the individual appropriations within each agency under the budget jurisdiction. But for today's purposes, I'll just be walking through the summary document. And the title of this document is Jobs and Economic Growth, All Funds Budget Overview, November 2022 Forecast. And just to get yourself familiar with the document, on the left-hand side is going to be a list of the agencies and funds underneath this budget jurisdiction. And then following on the right-hand side is the figures within this budget for fiscal year 22 through fiscal year 27. And the reason to include all of these years is first, fiscal year 22-23 is the current biennium we are in. Fiscal year 24-25 is going to be the year that we are setting the budget for this session. And then fiscal year 26-27 are the tails of the budget setting years, so more of the planning estimates as we move forward. So quickly, I'll just walk through the agencies and kind of focus on the general fund and any other funds that might be pertinent to this committee. So first, the Department of Employment and Economic Development is one of the larger spending areas within the Jobs Committee. And you'll see there's plenty of funds within the Department of Employment and Economic Development. I'll just point out the general fund in fiscal year 24-25 has a base budget of $186.8 million. And then another fund to look at or to point out is the Workforce Development Fund, which is at $106.47 million in fiscal year 24-25. And as you'll see, there's many more funds. I won't touch on each one, just to keep it simple. We'll move on to Explore Minnesota Tourism, an agency that's in the jobs jurisdiction this session. And the Explore Minnesota Tourism has appropriations from the general fund, federal funds, and special revenue fund. The general fund base being $29 million in fiscal year 24-25. The Public Facilities Authority also falls under the jobs jurisdiction, only getting special revenue fund appropriations at $549,000 in fiscal year 24-25. Next, the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation receives funding from the General Fund, Iron Range Resources Fund, and Douglas J. Johnson Economic Protection Trust. And the General Fund has a little bit smaller funding here at $5 million, whereas the other funds have a little bit larger appropriations of $95 million in the Iron Range Resources Fund and $20 million the Douglas J. Johnson Economic Protection Trust Fund. The last agency under this jurisdiction is the Destination Medical Center, with general funding of $69 million in fiscal year 24-25. And you'll see the next few lines show a general fund transfer for the 21st Century Fund, and that shows up in fiscal year 22 as a one-time transfer. And then the unemployment insurance replenishment appropriation is just listed out separately here. It does fall under the jurisdiction of deed, but just to highlight it, as it was a point of focus last session with one-time appropriations from the general fund, $405 million in fiscal year 22, and appropriation from the State Fiscal Recovery Fund, about $2.3 billion. And then below that is just the all-fund summary of all these agencies and all the funds combined. And I won't go into too much detail on this, but just leave it at that, and I'll stand for any questions the committee might have.
Thank you so much. Senator Drahan.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for their presentation. Can you just real quick remind me why the numbers would be different from like the top for like the general fund to the bottom, all fund summary? Some of them line up and some of them don't. Like Workforce Development Fund is the same. Renewable Development Account's the same. Like special revenue is a little off.
Ms. Norner.
Mr. Chair and Senator Draheim, so the very bottom, all funds summary is just showing the total general fund from each agency. So it might not line up exactly with the Department of Employment and Economic Development because it's adding the general fund from Explore Minnesota Tourism, the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, and Destination Medical Center. So total up, yeah.
Thank you.
Senator Durham, any follow-up? All right. Any other questions from any other member? All right. Thank you so much for that report. And again, if you want to ask staff questions offline, you are certainly welcome to do so. All right. So Senator, I called you Senator. Ooh. Ms. Fontaine, to the jurisdiction.
Okay, Mr. Chair and members, let's give this another try. So everyone should have a copy now of the draft jurisdiction list. And as I mentioned, once this is finalized, the entire document will be posted on the Senate website. Let's start at the top then. We see the state agencies listed. And the largest state agency within your jurisdiction for this committee is the Department of Employment and Economic Development. And we now also have within this jurisdiction the Explore Minnesota Tourism Council, and previously this was with the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I think when I started 15 years ago, it was within the Jobs Committee jurisdiction, but things move around from time to time. My apologies, I hear a lot of feedback. We had Ms. Rukavina here earlier to describe a little bit about the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, the department. And then we also have the Public Facilities Authority under the purview of this committee. There are some other groups that a lot of these I've never dealt with, or maybe you might not hear a lot about, but they are something that could come up from time to time. Most of these are boards or councils that have an economic development slant to them, so that's why they're grouped here. So the Destination Medical Center, of course, is something that's an economic development corporation. Then there's also Enterprise Minnesota, the Job Skills Partnership Board, the Rehabilitation Council for the Blind, the State Rehabilitation Council, the Workforce Development Council, and I think we can get rid of the Victory Memorial Drive Implementation Steering Task Force. I thought I'd looked this up before, but I think it might have expired in 2009. So unless someone knows this steering task force and knows they're still functioning, I think they have done their work. So we will move on to the confirmations section. And confirmations, as you may know, are those positions that are subject to confirmation by the Senate. And the statute will say that they are subject to confirmation by the Senate, and that's what brings them before this committee. We have the Commissioner of Employment and Economic Development, Commissioner of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation, and then Destination Medical Center. And those four members that would be subject to confirmation are those that were appointed by the governor. And then there are other members that are also part of Destination Medical Center, but those are the only four that come before this committee. Then within the budget jurisdiction, Ms. Noldner went through this already, but I will quickly do that. We've got the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the Public Facilities Authority is under deed somewhat. I also wanted to point out that broadband, while it is something, an office that's within deed, it is with the Agriculture, Broadband, and Rural Development Committee that Chair Putnam is chairing that committee. And at times in the past, broadband has been under your jurisdiction, but it just depends on what the majority decides. We've also got Destination Medical Center, Explore Minnesota Tourism, and then the Department of Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation. There are other issues that are listed below, and again, some of these come up from time to time. A lot of times this jurisdiction list is used by you, the president, and when you're deciding where bills should be sent. Also, when people want to know who should be drafting a bill, it'll get sent to someone in my office, and then we can't decide who is drafting it. It might be something I've never heard of. So we go to this list, and decide, yes, that is my drafting assignment. So that's kind of how we use this particular document, and if there's anything you have a question about, please let me know.
Any questions for Ms. Fontaine? Any questions? All right, seeing no questions, thank you both so very much for the fiscal information as well as the jurisdiction information. And remember, as I mentioned about fiscal, if you have any questions for Senate Council, do not hesitate to give Ms. Fontaine a call. Even when it comes to amendments or anything else that you want that is pertinent to this committee, you are certainly welcome to do so. So now we will have Senator Hauschild come before us. So come forward, Senator Hauschild, to present his bill. And so before us is going to be Senate File 40. We'll let him get ready there. And once you're ready, Senator Hauschild, it's my understanding that you have an amendment, is that correct?
That's correct, Chair Champion and committee members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this bill before you. Senate File 40, the Iron Mining Related Industry Additional Unemployment Benefits Program. I have an amendment A5.
All right, so Senator Mohammed moves the A5 amendment. So if we can get that A5 amendment handed out, please. Do you have it already? Okay. All right, so if you will go ahead and present about the A5 amendment.
Great. Thank you, Chair Champion and committee members. I want you to imagine for a minute that you work a tough job like mining. You've worked your entire life in an industry and you've worked hard. It's pretty difficult for a lot of us that wear business suits every day to imagine that kind of work. You're proud of the work that you do, you provide for your spouse, kids, and family, and then one day it's announced that you'll be laid off for almost a year at no fault of your own. Not for a lack of working hard and giving everything to your work. You live in a rural community where there aren't a lot of other options. A place where an announcement like this sends ripple effects across the region. You live in a place that is proud of, but also reliant on your industry, where local businesses, grocery stores, mom and pop stores, and basically everyone else is reliant on your paycheck spending in that community. After months of being unemployed, your benefits are about to run out just as the winter months and the holidays come about. You have presents for your kids, food to put on the table, mortgages to pay, and everything else that we all deal with on a daily basis. So we're done imagining, because that's exactly what happened in my district this last year. In May 2022, Cleveland Cliffs announced that they'd be idling North Shore Mine in Babbitt and the pellet processing plant in Silver Bay. This resulted in approximately 410 miners being laid off, in addition to other workers directly impacted by this that worked at the mine as contractors. In July 2022, Cleveland Cliffs again announced that the idling at North Shore would be extended until at least April of 2023. Given that the workers' standard unemployment would be running out in November, I began calling for a special legislative session to address the workers' unemployment benefits, knowing that that date would be coming. After the election and with no special session on the horizon, I began working on drafting this bill that would provide 26 weeks of unemployment insurance extensions retroactively applied to November, when those worker benefits ran out. This is the earliest date, and the 26 weeks would last until April, which is the earliest date that's been given by Cleveland Cliffs for reopening the mine and pellet processing plant. The unemployment benefits would come to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund at a an updated fiscal note of, I believe, 10.2 million. I'm approximating there. The Iron Range is waiting for action, and I'm pleased to say that this has bipartisan support, and I want to thank my Senate colleagues across the aisle, Senator Farnsworth, who is here today, as well as Senator Eichhorn, for their involvement on drafting this legislation. I hope you will join me in heeding the call and support our workers and their families when they need it most. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I also have 4 individuals from the community that are here to testify, and I'll defer to you on that process.
Thank you, Senator Hauschild. Before we get to that, we know that the A5 amendment has been moved by Senator Mohammed, but we're going to go through that A5 amendment because it's a delete all, so we're going to ask Senate Council to go through that A5.
Sure, thank you.
Amendment for us. Ms. Fontaine.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Champion. The A5 amendment is mostly all the same language from the underlying amendment. However, I thought it would be best to just show all the language all together instead of doing it as a page and line. The key differences from the as introduced version would be on lines 110 to 113. So there are basically 2 employers from which applicants could get these additional 26 weeks. One would be for those applicants from the North Shore Mine, and then in line 1.10 to 1.3, this would narrow the related, what was related industries would narrow it to one employer. Dyno Noble, I believe, is the explosive manufacturing industry employer, and so it was narrowed from the previous version. Then there were also throughout the bill, now there are some date changes that Deed supplied to us to just make sure that the bill worked for everyone, that the dates, there were different layoff dates and different end dates. And so those are included in here, and quite technical. I don't think it would be something everyone would need to know. But other than that, the bill basically provides the 26 of additional weeks of unemployment benefits, and this would be after the applicants had exhausted their regular benefits. It talks about the weekly and maximum amounts of those benefits would be the same as their regular benefits. It also talks about in subdivision 4 if an applicant would qualify for a new regular benefit account and what would need to be done, whether they'd need to apply for the new regular benefit account or if they'd apply for the additional benefits. Then in subdivision 5, that discusses the charging of benefits. So normally when benefits are paid out, that would go into the calculation for the experience rating for an employer. However, this legislation states that the benefits paid out would not be charged to the employer, so it would not affect their experience rating. And then subdivision 6 merely talks about if an applicant would be eligible for some federal trade readjustment benefits, that they would not be eligible for this benefit. I also want to point out that this language is very similar to previous additional benefits that were provided for a variety of industries, specifically for some mining companies, but also in the past, there was the avian flu, and some airlines, they would get these additional benefits. And this has been going on, I believe, since the late 90s. It doesn't happen a lot, but definitely a handful of times, and this language is somewhat similar to that. I think that's about it.
Thank you so very much. Now, this is the shape that the author wants this amendment in. So do you want to ask your question before we adopt the amendment? Senator Drahan?
Chair, I just had one quick question about, is it standard to go 26 weeks instead of 13? Because most of them I've seen, the short time I've been here, was 13, but.
Ms. Fontaine?
Mr. Chair, members, I think it has varied. I believe the last 2, I don't know if it was for Hibbing, taconite, I think it was 26 weeks. It has been 13 also. It just really maybe depends on how long they think this is going to go out, and so how long the legislature has decided, depending on those factors.
Senator Hauschild, do you have an answer to that question?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair Champion. Senator Draheim, thanks for the question. Council Fontaine is correct that there have been 2 times of the last, let's say, 6 or 7 unemployment extensions that have been 26 weeks, and there have been about 4 that have been 13 weeks. I'm looking at LTV Steel, which is a well-known idling and actually complete closure that occurred on the Iron Range, and that was a 26-week extension.
Any questions before we take action on the A5 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the A5 amendment say aye. All those opposed to say no. The amendment passes. Any other questions centered around the Senate File 40 as amended? Any other questions? Any, Senator Pratt?
Mr. Chair, will we have an opportunity to ask questions after testifiers?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go to John Arbogast. Did I say that right? If you'll come to the table, and then we also have Janelle Jones also join them at the table. And if you'll go in that particular order, if you'll first introduce yourself, where you're from, and then provide your testimony.
Hello, my name is John Arbogast. I'm the staff representative from District 11 in northern Minnesota. So what that fancy title means is basically I'm responsible for the contracts and the local union halls out of 5 out of the 6 mines in northern Minnesota. So the 6th one being North Shore Mining, a non-union facility. So a question might be, why is a steelworker union representative here testifying in front of you all? Well, to me, a miner is a miner. We're all miners in northern Minnesota. The workers at North Shore Mining are our fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, daughters, sons. So it's a small-knit community. A lot of the people that we grew up with, are friends with now, are working at North Shore Mining or were working at North Shore Mining. What we're trying to do is what's going on is we're trying to stop the bleeding. So what's going on right now with North Shore being down almost a year, we have approximately 75 to 100 of those miners that have moved on. United Taconite and Eveleth has hired 40 of them. Each of the other mines, Mintac, Keetac, Minorca, they've taken about 10. So in a way, it's nice that they were able to go from one Cliffs facility to the other or to U.S. Steel. U.S. Steel is happy to take a well-trained miner that has years of experience and poach that from Cliffs. But what the bad side of that is there's kids that are going to high school that maybe don't want to go to college that would step into those jobs. Those are vacancies these other mines have filled with those North Shore miners. There's different craftsmen that are very hard, those jobs to fill. So you have the kids coming out of the VOTEC at Mesabi Range and Eveleth, they're not able to get those jobs because if you were a company, what would you do? Take a miner that has 15 years working as a millwright at North Shore Mining, or a kid that just went through a 2-year program at Mesabi Range College. So it's adversely affecting the Iron Range and young people. And if we don't stop this, I don't even know how many people from North Shore have taken jobs with, say, the city of Eveleth, city of Virginia. So that number, we're thinking, could be equally that high. And as I've testified on these unemployment extensions before, and some questions are, well, why give it to the members of North Shore Mining? Silver Bay is kind of out in the middle of the woods, Babbitt also. Those communities are being devastated. What is North Shore going to do if they are going to start in April? Where are you going to find 100+ men or women to fill those vacancies? Are they going to be able to go back to full production, missing over 100 people? I don't think so. What this unemployment extension would do is give these men and women a chance to stay in the area, not move out of state, not have to go to another mine, start over with different things like seniority, pensions, health care, all those things. So it's critical that we get this extension so we can stop the bleeding, stop the workers from moving out of state onto different jobs, stop the fact that young people can't fill these vacancies at all the other 5 mines. So thank you for allowing me to testify, and I'll take any questions on mining or whatever you have.
Thank you so much to Mr. Arbogast. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you so very much. Ms. Jones?
Hi, thank you, Chairman Champion and committee members for having me here today. I want to take a moment to just talk a little bit about the commerce side of things on the North Shore.
And will you be so kind as just to reintroduce yourself and
sure.
also where you're from and
Sure.
then
Yep,
go forward?
thank you. Yep, I'm Janelle Jones. I'm the President CEO of the Lake County Chamber of Commerce. As you all know, the North Shore is an extremely popular place in Minnesota, as many of you, I'm sure, take an annual trip up there to enjoy Lake Superior. Our business community hangs on tight during our shoulder seasons, our off seasons. You know, summertime, things are pretty good up there, but when we start hitting these shoulder seasons, you know, we really do start to feel that. Cliffs provides real living wage jobs in our area to hundreds of people who are a critical part of keeping our local economic fabric alive. Losing the paychecks of these hard workers is detrimental to the entire balance of the North Shore economy, and our local business communities rely on these folks to keep their doors open and their people employed. When skilled workers move out of the area, they take their families with them, they take their spouses with them, they take their children with them, and we already have a very deprived workforce up on the North Shore. This takes so many people out of the equation. It takes the kids out of our schools, it takes the patients out of our hospitals, and it takes our employees out of the businesses. So in reality, yes, our miners need this extension, but so does our small business community, so do our schools, so do our hospitals. So I thank you for your time and your consideration in supporting the Senate file. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Jones. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you so very much. I am going to go to two additional testifiers, Wade LeBlanche and Rick Gautermont. And he's on Zoom. Let's see, is Wade with us? Is Wade also on Zoom?
No, Wade is right here.
Okay, Wade, all right. So we will start in that order, Mr. LeBlanche, and then we'll go to Gautermont.
Thank you, Chair Champion and the rest of the committee. I'm Wade LeBlanc, Mayor of Silver Bay and a small business owner. The economics are simple to talk about. What people don't want to talk about is the effects it has on our schools, the effects that it has on our volunteer services such as fire departments, ambulance service, coaches. You know, it touches every aspect of the community. Over half of our firefighters are miners in Silver Bay. Just like, you know, Lake County Chamber Janelle and Senator Hauschild talked about economics. If you don't have a school in a small town, you don't have a small town. And that's the most important building in our community. And having these good young people, you know, potentially leaving is more than devastating for the whole community and the whole area. You know, some workers, yeah, they live in Silver Bay, some live in Two Harbors, Aurora, Hoyt Lakes, Virginia, Eveleth, Grand Marais. So these workers are coming from the whole area, and this impacts not only Silver Bay and Babbitt, but the whole region. Housing, you know, if these two people leave, you know, some of the housing is filled with people that use these houses as cabins. Well, then when they're looking for mine workers, you know, we're already in a housing shortage. So we're trying to think of different ways to create new housing all the time. And you know, in a small community, it's a little more difficult than in a larger community where you have more numbers and more people. But if there's any questions I can answer, you know, thank you for your time, and we'll certainly like to answer any questions.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. LeBlanc. Any question for the testifier? Seeing none, we'll go to our next testifier, Mr. Gautermont, who is appearing with us by Zoom. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Gautermont?
I can hear you just well, and thank you for accommodating me on the Zoom today. I know that isn't always appropriate, but and thanks for allowing me time to address you today.
And make sure that you give us your full name and where you're from, and then go right into your testimony. Thank you so much for joining us.
Name is Rick Gautermont, and I recently retired from a 38-year career at North Shore Mining. And also, for the past 30 years, I've served the community as their Lake County Commissioner. The iron mining industry is very cyclical, as you all know, with the demands for steel fluctuating greatly from year to year. I have personally lived through several of these low demand periods when various plants were forced to reduce production and place some of their skilled workforce on layoff status. Every few years when a layoff occurs, these employees, much like seasonal workers and those employed in the trades, depend on unemployment insurance to carry them over until they are called back to work. With this assistance, they are able to stay current on mortgages and other critical expenses, such as groceries and medical needs. In the past, extended shutdowns always drove for the need for unemployment insurance extensions. These extensions created enough security to keep the skilled workforce from relocating. The fact that you are having this hearing tells us there are families in northeastern Minnesota that are hurting and need your help. These workers have run out of benefits and are now at risk. Prior to the shutdown in North Shore Mining, Silver Bay only had 2 houses on the market. This past week, there was 26 on the market. Most of these belong to workers who have run out of insurance and are now forced to sell out and relocate for employment purposes. Once they sell and relocate, the Silver Bay area and the North Shore area will not get these families back. I ask you to support the 26 weeks extension and help keep the communities intact. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you so very much for being with us today, and thank you to all the other testifiers. Now, committee, if you have any questions of any of the testifiers or to Senator Hauschild, now's the time, or if you have any amendments. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hauschild, I have a number of questions regarding the fiscal note and the changes in your bill. And so let me just start with following up on Senator Draheim's question, right? When we did unemployment extension benefit for during the COVID pandemic, we did it at 13 weeks, and we said we'd come back. I'm hearing some feedback, Mr. Chair. I don't know who's. Thank you.
We're okay now, Senator Pratt.
Can you again explain, why we're looking at 26 versus 13 and taking a more incremental approach? And along with that, I'd really like to get into the change in dates. One, why we moved the date from May, what was it, the original, May 3rd back to, or May 1st back to April 3rd, and why we are extending layoffs into March of this year, when those layoffs have ostensibly already occurred.
All right, Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Senator Champion. Senator Pratt, thank you for the question. With regards to the 26 weeks, what happened was in May of 2022, these layoffs were announced and implemented. And so the standard unemployment insurance for these workers lasted until November. If you count from November until the earliest possible date that Cleveland Cliffs has announced that they will reopen the plant and mine, that's in April. And so what I did was, in drafting this bill, was came up with getting them to that date that was provided by the company for the earliest possible opening. So essentially, we know that these workers will be laid off until April, and we wanted to be sure that they had those benefits up until the time that they would be able to go back to work at the mine and pellet plant.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I were just to do the math, you have workers that were laid off the week of April 3rd. We typically have a 7-day waiting period before benefits kick in. So the first benefits would have been probably the week of the 10th or the 17th. I'm not quite sure how to start counting that. Takes the benefits out to the first full week of October 2026. But it doesn't answer the question why we are extending expanded benefits for people who haven't been laid off yet. When, as you've said, the mine is expected to open up in April. So why do we need extended benefits for somebody who isn't laid off, may not be laid off, or if they're laid off, they're certainly within the standard benefits period? You're covering people who aren't in the pocket that you've talked about.
Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Chair Champion, Senator Pratt. It's a great question. The main reason why we would do it this way is because exactly what our testifiers and myself talked about with regards to this idling. It's not just what happens to perhaps, the immediate workers there, but as we saw with this amendment, we had some contractors that were impacted directly through blasting at the mine. And so from my understanding, if there were to be workers that got unemployed from Cleveland Cliffs in the meantime, we wanted to make sure the language was broad enough to capture them. Some of these things fluctuate. Maybe a worker goes back to work, maybe they're laid off. In order to not come back to this committee and say, oh my gosh, we missed XYZ employee on a technicality, we worked with DEED to implement the language that would encapsulate the workers most impacted.
And Senator Pratt, if you like, we could also, if you desire, have Dee come up as well, who could also talk through or work through some of your questions as well. But it's also my understanding that a person would not be eligible, Senator Hauschild, if they're not laid off. This is only for someone who's laid off. So if a person is not laid off, Senator Pratt, it's my understanding that they would not be eligible. Is that right, Senator Hauschild? And then we'll turn to Senator Pratt if he wants someone from Dee to come up and help.
Thank you, Chair Champion. That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
I'm always happy to have whoever wants to answer a question step up to the table and answer it. But I don't think Senator Hauschild's really gotten to the question, maybe as I've asked it. We're asking this committee to approve extended benefits for people that might be laid off 2 months from now. And they would certainly qualify, and we're talking about, I believe, the initial filing period, not the refiling period, because we have language back in the bill that talks about if somebody actually, got back, was rehired and had to go back on unemployment. I'm still trying to figure out why you're looking 2 months into the future for a mine that's expected to reopen, and why we're not just, because you talked very eloquently about the people whose benefits ran out, and I get that, okay? But we're talking about people who haven't even applied yet. 2 months in the future, they may apply. Why do they need extended benefits? Because they haven't run out. They still have 26 full weeks.
Senator
This isn't
Hauschild.
about, and Mr. Chair, this isn't about the contractors, because that's covered, as Ms. Doyle-Fontaine said, in lines 110 through 113.
Senator Hauschild.
Senator Champion, Senator Pratt, thank you again for the clarification on the question. So these layoffs did not just happen all at once. Different workers are laid off at different times. And so it's my understanding that by going out to this date, we will make sure that when that 26-week initial unemployment insurance date ends, that these workers will still qualify for the extended unemployment.
Senator Pratt.
So, Mr. Chair, if maybe somebody, Ms. Fontaine or Dee, can clarify lines 1.8 and 1.9? Because if I understand Senator Hauschild, he's saying that benefits will be to anybody who's unemployed during these dates, but I took this to mean that they were laid off between these dates. And therefore, we're talking about not people who are in the situation that Senator Hauschild said, but we're talking about people who still have full benefits available to them.
So good question. We have some folks from DEED that will come up to the table, if you don't mind, and give us some clarification around 1.8 and 1.9 is what I think Senator Pratt has asked for clarification around. And our friends from DEED, if you'll be so kind as to introduce yourselves and the agency and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Champion. My name is Evan Rowe. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Services and Operations at DEED.
Thank you, Chair Champion, members. My name is Jim Hegman. I'm the UI Director at DEED.
All right, so the question, did you hear the question from Senator Pratt? Okay, and so whoever's going to answer, if you just reintroduce yourself so that the tape will know which person is answering.
I'll let Jim get this one, Senator. Thank you.
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, could you please repeat the question?
Thank you. Mr. Chair.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to understand lines 1.8 and 1.9 in the A5 amendment. As I understand it, we're talking about people who are getting an initial layoff between April 3rd of 2022 and March 4th of 2023, which is effectively 2 months from now, for a mine that's expected to open up a month later. And it seems that people who are laid off in March would not need extended benefits because they would have their regular benefits available to them. As I understand Senator Hauschild's response, that was to cover the people who had been laid off an extended period of time. Can you help me explain the population in lines 1.8 and 1.9 and how we're defining that population so that I can rectify the discrepancy between how I'm interpreting that piece of the language and how Senator Hauschild is interpreting that piece of the language?
To the testifier.
Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt, the dates were set based on looking at the actual data inside of the UI system for the individuals that have filed so far and the bit of information that we have about what might occur after that. We were trying to make sure, based on the request for technical assistance, that we didn't miss anybody, as that's what we were aiming at. So that's the intent behind the dates. There was, I don't think any objective beyond ensuring that, for instance, if one of the entities had additional layoffs and they occurred over a span of time, that they would not be missed for the reasons that I think was mentioned before by the senator, not having gaps, or one individual was picked up and another person had a different outcome.
And go for it.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Pratt, just to that point, once assuming the mine reopens, right, and folks are called back to work, that would, people would not, they would not be able to claim benefits once the mine reopens anyway. So hopefully the kind of net effect there is nil.
And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Hauschild, is that a person who's going to claim benefits must exhaust all previous benefits before they're able to take advantage of or apply for the benefits that are being sought today. Is that right, or am I wrong someplace? Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Chair Champion. That is correct. And if I might offer a clarifying statement as well.
Yes.
It's important to note that April was the earliest possible date that was given for reopening. That does not mean that Cleveland Cliffs has guaranteed the reopening of the mine and pellet plant in April. Just want to make sure that's clear.
Any follow-up questions, Senator Pratt?
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I understand that as well. I'm just trying to get to the point that we're talking about extended unemployment benefits for people who have been unemployed in the past, and you're expanding that into the future, promising basically 52 weeks of benefits to someone who hasn't even been laid off yet, which is well above and beyond, I think, what this committee has done in the past. You also extended the end date from September of 2023 out until January of 2024. And I'm trying to figure out, again, And, you know, I'm glad you brought that point up, Mr. Chair. I understand that these are benefits paid off to people who lost their jobs due to no fault of their own, right? But we also have a workforce shortage that we want them to move into. And we want them to move into other employment. This is meant to be a bridge. And we've decided that effectively half a year is the bridge that is reasonable, and now you're asking the committee to extend it another half a year. And for somebody who's not even unemployed yet, potentially granting them 12 months of benefits right out of the chute. So why did we change the date from September 2nd of 2023 out to January 27th of 2024?
Senator Hauschild or Representative from Deed.
Thank you, Senator Champion. I'll defer to Deed for this question.
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, the dates, again, were aligned with the actual, what we would call account dates, the years, the time that the benefit years began. Repeating what Deputy Commissioner Rowitz said, this is just to ensure that we don't have gaps. Obviously, folks who got back to work would not be eligible if the line were to reopen. So it was to ensure that it lined up with the end of the benefit years that exist for all the current applicants that we could find that were laid off from these two facilities.
And I'm going to ask Senator Fontaine, excuse me, Senate Counsel.
Is that a promotion or a demotion? I'm not quite sure which.
Maybe I have this, you know, a prophetic deal that's going on here. That you, district do you live in? Oh, what district do you live in? Just as long as you don't live in mine, you're okay. Ms. Fontaine.
Mr. Chair, I live in Senator Aaron Murphy's district, and I'm not looking for that job. But, Mr. Chair, Senator Pratt and Senator Hauschild, the date that you see on line 1.15 to 1.16, I received information from Deed that due to the narrowed class for the Dino Noble, that I think some of their layoffs were much later than the North Shore layoffs. And so that's, I think, part of the reason that had to get really pushed out for those individuals if if their layoff continued longer. So that was my understanding for that particular date. Then with regard to the range of the April 3rd to the March 4th, I did look back at the legislation from 2016, and that language just said if they were laid off after a certain date. So that would have actually been open-ended. So in a way, this is kind of at least putting an end to it. However, like you said, it is out in the future. And before it had no end date. So I just wanted to also point that out.
Thank you so much. Any additional questions? I know Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill forward. And I have a question that I think you'll probably have to phone a friend for. I'm a little rusty. On the fiscal note, on page 2, under bill description, I just want to, you know, obviously these workers need help. I don't think there's anybody up here that does not agree we have to do something to help these workers out. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go to the companies, these big billion-dollar mining companies. The question I have, is it commonplace for that third paragraph on the fiscal note where it says this bill provides these additional benefits shall not be charged to the reimbursing account of the reimbursing employers going on from there? And is that common? Do we normally do that in this situation? Do we kind of give a pass? You know, when I used to have over 100 employees, and when someone filed unemployment, it would hit against my formula for the next cycle. So that's kind of my question. Is this normal to give more or less a break to a large corporation like this?
Senator Hauschild or Deed.
Thank you, Chair Champion and Senator Draheim, for the question. I'll defer to them on the specifics. You know, in this case, given the health of the UI fund, and the circumstances that Cleveland Cliffs is in, it was my sense that making sure that there wasn't an additional burden would be something that could be helpful for them as we try to get these workers back to work. And so if there's, if it's your sense that you would rather change that and put an additional tax on the mine, for those UI benefits in the future, that's something that is in the purview of the committee. But I'll defer to them to answer the specifics. Indeed, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Draheim, I'm afraid we'd have to kind of go back through the history just to kind of take a look. I don't right in front of me know kind of all of the ways that things have or have not been assigned to experience rating or not.
Senator Draheim, it is my understanding, before you come back, it is my understanding that that language is common when you think in terms of these type of bill proposals, dated all the way back. In fact, this was one of the questions that I had, and I was able to see that this language has repeatedly been there. Yes, Senator Draheim.
Thank you. I was just looking at this article in the Star Tribune, and last year revenue for Cleveland Cliffs was $20 billion. So we're not talking about a mom and pop shop here, and I know we tried to fix UI last year and put a bunch of money in there, which was needed. We had no choice. We had to do it. I supported that. And I support this concept that you're trying to accomplish here. My biggest problem is with that. If I was a mom and pop business owner, which I am, and I would not be getting the same treatment that Wall Street seems to get, and that's kind of my dig with this bill as written. I don't think we need to be bailing out Wall Street when there's so many people and small businesses that are having a hard time, and not just in Northeast Minnesota, across the state with all the inflation. So that would be my suggestion, Chair, is that we address that. I think if there is a precedent, I'd like to probably go back and look at the size of the corporation. But I have a hard time bailing out a company that had $20 billion in revenue last year. Thank you.
So thank you, Senator Draheim. Senator Hauschild, to that issue, which seems to be an issue of should this committee take your lead and others in making sure that you hold the company harmless while you're trying to help the employees. And it's my understanding that Cleveland Cliffs is one of the larger employees in this area. So can you speak more to Senator Draheim's question?
Thank you, Chair Champion. And Senator Draheim, thank you again for the follow-up question. To your point about, bailing out Wall Street versus mom and pop shops, just to be clear, I would look for this language, whether it was a mom and pop shop in my district or if it's one of the largest employers, excuse me. And I think, Senator Champion is exactly right, because this is such a large employer in my district and across the Iron Range. As I noted, Senator Farnsworth and Senator Eichhorn are both on this bill, who understand that that this company and others employ some of the largest numbers in our region and impact our local communities, local schools, hospitals. And so again, I would present this language as I did with this amendment to keep it harmless for this large employer in my district. But if it's the decision of this committee to do it differently, then I understand that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hauschild, I want to sort of follow up on the question asked by our friend Senator Pratt, which I think is an insightful and important concern that he raises. I mean, the idea of someone having a year of unemployment insurance because we've extended it gives me pause too. But with concerns like this in a policy argument, they pivot around questions of probability or likelihood. So I have two questions for you. One being, what is the likelihood of, if you are able to sort of propose an idea, the likelihood of the plant not opening for a full year after April, if that's something that you can sort of speculate about. But more importantly, this is your district, right, Senator Hauschild? You've knocked some doors there. Is it your impression that the people we're talking about want to go back to work?
Senator Hauschild.
Thank you, Chair Champion. Senator Putnam, thank you for the question. So first and foremost, that's exactly right. These folks are proud miners. They've been working for decades, perhaps, in this field. And they want to do this work. We know that miners, not to talk down to any other workers, but they're some of the physically hardest working people I think we have in our state. And I'm proud to represent our region and those workers. We know that this plant and this mine are going to reopen. There have been public statements of that sort, so I'm not guessing at that. And so I think what this unemployment extension specifically does is it ensures that our communities in Silver Bay, Babbitt, and the entire region have this workforce not lose hope, not move away, not leave our schools, have their spouses pull away from their jobs, move down to the Twin Cities, move to Wisconsin. We need this workforce to stay on the Iron Range and the North Shore so that our mines can rely on them when they do reopen. And so that's my goal, not to speculate on what a worker's drive is for doing their work or what they might do with this unemployment. I have no doubt in my mind that the hardworking Northern Minnesotans will get back to work in any capacity they can. We heard from testimony from John Arbogast with the steelworkers that this is already happening, that people are already finding other jobs in the mines, they're finding other jobs in city and municipality work and education. So folks will work. It's just let's provide this benefit so that for those that don't have that opportunity, we keep them in their communities and keep that workforce strong for the future. Thank you.
Any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you,
All
Senator
right.
Hauschild.
Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and as you know, I'm kind of a numbers geek, and so I appreciate your patience with me as I go through these questions. But I think Senator Draheim, and to Senator Putnam's comment, I've, had the, really the honor of privilege of going up to the Iron Range on several occasions, talking to, I hope I don't butcher your name, Mr. Armagest's folks, and, they are hardworking, salt of the earth type of people that don't want to be unemployed. We also know that the impact of this is really a jobs retention program for the company that laid them off, right? Especially if you're going to be going out to a year from today with benefits. Goes far beyond what you described as really the primary objective of the bill. But I think Senator Draheim touched on a question, I'm not sure it was answered. Are any of these employers reimbursing employers?
Senator Hauschild.
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, I will defer to Deed for that question.
Chair Champion. Senator
Testify
Pratt,
to Deed.
we have not finished the research on that. I can't tell you that we have identified any that are reimbursing employers.
Senator Pratt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had similar concerns over the language that Senator Draheim mentioned, because reimbursing employers are people, are companies that, whose labor force is covered by the unemployment insurance program, but they don't pay in the monthly premium. We expect them to come back and reimburse the trust fund for those expenditures. Because as I look at the fiscal note on page 3, it says this has the effect of, and I'm looking under long-term fiscal considerations, the last sentence in the first paragraph and then into the second paragraph. This has the effect of reducing the balance of the UI trust fund without commensurate future employer tax or reimbursement receipts. As such, this bill has an adverse impact on the UI trust fund solvency. My question to Deed or to Senator Hauschild is, if we are not recognizing the experience rating, and that is meant to say that those companies that have larger and more frequent claims, just like if you have more speeding tickets and car crashes, your auto insurance goes up. If you have more claims and higher, more costly claims, your unemployment premium should go up. And yet, we're holding them harmless, and I'm wondering why we're doing that.
Senator Hauschild.
Chair Champion, Senator Pratt, I will just defer to Deed. I think I'm happy to address this question again, but I'll defer to them first.
I can just speak, Chair Champion, Senator Pratt. Again, to our knowledge, the two main employers in question are tax-paying employers, not reimbursing employers. But it is, again, we don't want to make a categorical statement on that front. But I think as far as the question of, I think, subdivision 5 of the legislation, I think that's a public policy question, which I defer back to the senator on.
Senator Hauschild, any comments about it?
Thank you, Chair Champion. Senator Pratt, I would just repeat similarly to what I had mentioned to Senator Draheim. Yeah, thank you, Wade. The way that I was presenting this bill was based off of previous precedent of not having that language that would cause a marking sort of on that business to pay back into the UI. And the reason for that is because this is one of the largest employers in my district. I want to make sure that these workers get back to work as soon as possible. I want to make it, as easy as I can for that to happen. And again, if it's the position of this committee and the legislature to change that, certainly that's our purview to do that. But the way that I would prefer it is that we not add that additional burden onto our mine company and make sure these workers can get back to work.
Senator Pratt, any questions? Oh, Senator Draheim.
Chair, the more both companies involved, I think, are larger companies. If it was a smaller company, I would agree with you 100%. But I would like to offer an oral amendment.
Go ahead, Senator Draheim. What's your oral amendment?
I would like to delete 2.19 to 2.21. And I think this is an important bill. I appreciate the author bringing it forward. But I have a real hard time not motivating the company to negotiate with the trust company that owns the mineral rights. And as a business person, when there's a little pain in my checkbook, I'm more eager to work harder, to negotiate, to get something done. So I think this is the right thing to do, and I hope everybody would support my oral amendment to delete 2.19 to 2.21.
Senator Draheim moves deletion of 2.19 to 2.21. To that, Senator Hauschild.
Chair Champion, Senator Draheim, thank you for the amendment. Happy to have further discussion on this. I would also be happy to work with Senator Pratt on, changes that might be necessary in Finance Committee tomorrow should this move forward.
So, Senator Hauschild, I just want to be clear.
Yes,
are you
sorry.
supportive of the change or not?
No, I am not supportive
Okay.
of the change. I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay. Senator Hur.
Yeah, it wasn't me, but now I'm prompted the question. I just want to reinterpret what Senator Hauschild was saying. That he may not support that idea, but he may want to have further conversation with Senator Pratt so that amendment could be made in the Finance Committee. Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Senator Hauschild.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Chair Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't raise my hand. I just gestured like that. But thank you for allowing me to clarify the answer.
Senator Hurd, that's what happens when you start doing this right here. I'm thinking that you're trying to figure out if you want to raise your hand or not. Okay, Senator Pratt.
Chair, I'm sorry,
Senator
It's
Draheim.
been brought to my attention that maybe there's something we can work out offline and maybe address the larger company versus the company that only had a handful of employees at this mine, and kind of massage a amendment to not penalize the one company that really isn't at fault with the smaller number of employees, but yet the bigger one, which I don't want to say they're at fault 100%. I don't know the whole story, but what I've read in the Star Tribune, you know, they're $20 billion in revenue 1 year. I just have a hard time paying they should pay their fair share. And, but if the staff could work on an amendment to address that before it goes to the Finance Committee where Senator Pratt sits on, for tomorrow, I would withdraw my oral amendment. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Senator Hauschild.
Yes, I will agree to, Chair Champion, Senator Draheim, I will agree to that process. Thank you.
So,
I would withdraw my oral amendment.
Senator Draheim withdraws his oral amendment to delete lines 2.19 to 2.21. Any additional questions or further discussion? Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think this is really an important point, and I was supportive of Senator Draheim's amendment, giving us, you know, that one, let's make a statement here in the Committee of Origin, the Committee of Jurisdiction, that we want to make sure that we have a stable, reliable unemployment insurance fund. Because if you also look down in that same section under paragraph 2, the U.S. Department of Labor estimates that we should have a $2 billion reserve in the unemployment fund, and we're at just under 1.7 billion. And just, you know, Senator Hauschild, you mentioned that, and I worked on this bill, Senator Champion worked on this bill, Senator Putnam was a co-author of the bill last year. We worked very hard to get the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund off of life support last year. This is not a healthy fund. This is just off of life support. And as we put these additional strains on that fund, I might, you know, having waited 80 days for the House not to take action and incur almost $5 million of additional interest that we ended up paying the federal government due to their inaction, I am a little bit protective of this fund nowadays than I think maybe I ever was in the past. And so I think it's important that we allow the system to work as it was designed to work. We allow the surcharges to go in as they were designed to go in, and that those who have chosen to self-insure by being reimbursable employers, if any of them are, and I hope I can have that answer before the Finance Committee meets at 8:30 tomorrow, I would appreciate it. I think the better, and we're not setting new precedent that we have to go back and try to explain later. So I supported Senator Draheim's amendment, but I also support his decision to try to work out something more broadly between now and then.
Any other questions before we go forward? Any other questions from the committee? Seeing no further questions, Senator Mohammed renews her motion to pass Senate File 40 as amended, and she recommends passage and referred to the Committee on Finance. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The bill is passed and is recommended to go to Committee on Finance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so thank you, everyone, and I want to thank Commissioner Grove for his patience, and I know that we have a lot of work to do this session, as I'm sure you will agree, so please come to the table, and you can begin your presentation once you are ready, and thank you so very much for your patience today, Commissioner Grove.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. It's good to see you all again. Happy New Year, and congratulations on your elections. We're really excited to work with you here at the department. This committee is a strong partner of DEED, and we got a lot of great work ahead. So I know we just have 15 minutes left in this hearing today. The purpose of my time here today is to give you just a brief overview of what it is that DEED does. Some of you have worked a lot with us over the last several years. Some of you are new, so we'll give a broad overview and, of course, are available for questions now or later at any time that you would like. So the Department of Employment and Economic Development, it is a unique department in state government. It is really focused on growth. And our mission at a very basic level is to empower the growth of the Minnesota economy for everyone. We're not an agency that regulates a lot. We're not an agency that's thick with a lot of policy. We are an agency focused on growth. We put a lot of money back into the economy to grow it. And that is really what we do. Our mission is, as I mentioned before, to empower the growth of our economy for everyone. And at a glance, one way to think about our agency that is unique to other states is that we include both economic development and workforce development in the same agency. In most states, you'll have a commissioner for economic development, a commissioner for workforce development. In Minnesota, they're together. We think that's a unique strength because when you think about the dynamics of an economy, you've got jobs you want to create so you can create opportunity and wealth, and you need workers to fill those jobs. And so having them in the same building gives us some opportunities that other states don't quite have to make some of those connections between job seekers and the jobs that we need. When you look at the spectrum of what's at DEED, it's a really functionally diverse. I'm told, so there are slides. I'm looking at them, but you aren't. And I think you need to admit, there we go, into the meeting so she can project them. I started because I know we just have 15 minutes. I want to make sure we get to all of it, but you'll see slides momentarily that will give you a visual guide. One of the cool things about DEED, very diverse spectrum of functions. When you think about all the experiences that a worker might have in their life, all the dynamics that a business may face, we cover a lot of those under the same roof. We provide employment and training programs for people, services for people with disabilities that help them achieve vocational independence. We focus on business recruitment and expansion and retention and growth. We provide opportunities to individuals that are underrepresented in our economy. We host the state's trade office, our broadband program, community development, and many, many more things. It's a really unique kind of portfolio of things in our agency. The way we run DEED is based on really metrics-driven, results-focused effort. It's called OKRs. Many organizations use them. Not enough organizations in government, if you ask me, but it's a very common business practice. Very simple. We set aspirational goals based on the statutes and guidance you give us. We set ourselves with some key results that will determine whether or not we've been successful, and we score and measure those regularly. It's just kind of how we roll as an agency, and it allows us to set some pretty big goals and stretch ourselves to do things that we think Minnesota really needs and that you think it needs too, and we want to hold ourselves accountable to that. One of the other things that I'll just put on your radar before we get into some of the organizational details of how we're structured is the Governor's Council on Economic Expansion's 10-year report that was issued last summer. Many of you have seen this. We certainly circulated it pretty broadly. You've heard the governor mention it again and again. This is essentially a roadmap that he commissioned from a group of business leaders and nonprofit leaders and philanthropists across the state to say, what does our economy need in the next 10 years to be a successful place for business and for workers? And we'll share this around in the coming days again just to reorient all of us on it, but it's a really useful long-term map for economic growth. It is centered around 5 commitments to the state's economy, focused on infrastructure, communities, people, innovation, and businesses, and has just a lot of really practical things, many of which you'll see in the governor's budget as we go forward, that give us kind of a sense for what we need to do at this really unique inflection point for our state. We'll be talking a lot about that in the weeks and months ahead. But back to the department, just to give you the lay of the land in our structure, 4 major divisions: workforce development, workforce services, economic development, and kind of our general support services or operations. And I'll just walk through each of these briefly to give you a little bit of a sense of how we're situated, and then, again, happy to take questions. So first, workforce development. These are topics that you hear about every day in your district. We all know Minnesota has the tightest labor market in the country. This division of DEED is its largest, and it is focused on getting people into great jobs at a time when we need workers so desperately. First division to outline here is employment and training programs. The way to think about this is these are the grants that we give to nonprofits and other community-based organizations in the community to help train workers. We don't think for a second that DEED's going to train workers all by ourselves without any help from partners who have the kind of community experience that's needed, the cultural competencies, they live in these communities. We know that grant making is a great way to do this. So we run a pretty large grant making operation. It is focused on training, and it is a really useful and very public part of what we do at DEED, and something that we'll be discussing a lot with all of you in the coming weeks. The next division to focus on is our Career Force division. Many of you in your districts have a building with the Career Force logo on it. You've seen them. These were the old unemployment insurance offices back in the day. We've since rebranded as Career Force. These are federally funded and mandated centers for people to come in and find jobs, physical structures across the state, about 50 of them. Deed owns and operates only one, but we have several relationships across all 50. This is where we do the direct service, where our team will directly go out and help people who are unemployed and find jobs, focus on those are the biggest barriers to getting into our economy to help find work. And we do this in deep partnership with local workforce boards, local partners. This is not a top-down kind of thing. It is a very matrixed, partnership-driven effort to provide those services directly ourselves. And in these Career Force centers that you'll see in your districts and across the state, a lot of different teams will sit. You'll have your unemployment insurance team in there. You'll have your VRS team, your state services for the blind. It's kind of a one-stop shop for everything you would need to find work in a given geography. The next division to talk about is the Governor's Workforce Development Board. This is a board that every state in our country has. It is mandated by the Department of Labor, and it is a really rich body of experts in our economy that help guide our workforce strategy. Minnesota actually has the largest Governor's Workforce Development Board in the entire country. I think it's over 60 leaders at this point who are in this board. They help guide policy here at the agency alongside all of you, of course, and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is the federal statute that guides sort of federal workforce policy, requires states to put plans forward every year. This board writes that plan for our state. So a really important relationship for DEED and for the state. The other division we want to highlight here is the Office for New Americans. This is a pilot project we're in the process of right now. It is funded by a grant from an outside funder, for which we're grateful. This committee knows well that we have advocated and will continue to advocate for the full-time substantiation of this office. It's not a major financial outlay, but it is a tremendously important bridge between our agency and the rest of the state on helping immigrants, refugees find work. It also has a great interagency component where we work across all other agencies of state government to make sure we have really forward-leaning policies and procedures and outreach for immigrant and refugees in our state. So an important part of our agency now and something we need to advocate to happen full-time. So that's a look at workforce development. A lot more there, but we're kind of giving you the highlight reel here. The next division I'm going to talk about is economic development. And again, this is kind of the other side of that coin that uniquely complements workforce development at our agency. First division we'll point to there is business and community development. This is kind of the heart of the department, if you will. This is the group that delivers incentive awards to businesses in your districts to help them grow. It helps finance special appropriations that you put forward. It helps entrepreneurs and small businesses get off the ground. And it works directly with main streets across the state to further growth. This division's job is to really grow our economy, grow jobs for everyone. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox, many of which, frankly, need modernizing. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks, but that are really important to help grow Minnesota. Next division is our trade office. This is the office that really is the kind of global link between Minnesota businesses and the rest of the world. Uniquely here, the function is to help businesses that don't necessarily have that global portfolio or connection to start. There's a lot of small or mid-sized businesses who need help from government to kind of get started in global markets. Really powerful effort that we have in our office. It's just about 10 people, but boy, they are everywhere across the world. They work with satellite offices too in country. When the governor takes businesses on a trade mission, this is the office that helps make that happen. We provide grants to smaller businesses to get out there. It's a really unique function of a state that is always kind of punched above its weight globally when it comes to commerce. Another division we have is the Office for Broadband Development. That already came up a little bit earlier today. This is an incredibly important program we have at DEED, an award-winning program, I might add, one that many different states have kind of copied their programs and dynamics off of. They've looked at our program and said, boy, that program is working. Let's build one like it. We put out hundreds of millions of dollars in broadband funding. Often it's not funded directly through this committee and goes through ag. It kind of depends on the jurisdiction in a given year, but very relevant to your communities, very relevant to growth. This is, modern day plumbing. Everybody needs it. We all know that. The pandemic only highlighted it. This office basically gives grants to make sure that in areas where telecoms aren't really incentivized economically to build those lines or access, they have some government help to make sure every Minnesotan can get connected. We're at about 92% right now of the state, but boy, that final 8% is the hardest 8% because it hasn't happened already, so more work ahead there. And then lastly, in this division, we also seat our research division. Hopefully, you've all taken advantage of this division from time to time. We have both our economic analysis group that looks at the state of our economy and the world to better ferret out great business opportunities. And then our labor market information office, which is funded federally and is really kind of the office that gives that macroeconomic data that you hear about every month when we do those jobs reports at DEED, and you hear kind of the latest on all the major statistics from job growth to labor force participation. That's our LMI office putting that together. They work very closely with the federal government, but then they also do a lot of really unique and regularly posted articles on kind of the state of Minnesota's economy. We give them that kind of research freedom to explore issues that we think are really important and that we know that will benefit your constituencies and your businesses. I invite you to take a look at their website. They publish a quarterly magazine called Trends that really goes into great detail. I read it religiously. It's incredibly powerful information to understand what's happening in our state. So that's economic development and research. Our next division is workforce services. This again gets to workforce, but it's a bit more of these kind of big programs that mete out benefits or other dynamics that help workers in an always-on basis. The first thing I'll point out here is our vocational rehabilitation services. Federally funded largely, almost every state has one. We have one of the best ones in the country here in Minnesota. I say that as a matter of fact, not just opinion. It's been documented by several, and we actually put some state money into this as well because we care so much about it. What this boils down to is helping people with disabilities find employment. And when you look at the fact that about 82% of able-bodied Minnesotans are working, but only 43% of those with disabilities are working, there's a gap. And with a workforce shortage like the one we have right now, there's every reason to believe we can shrink that gap a lot based on the need. So this is a tremendous department. It's rather large, over 300 people across the state. Again, our mandate as a department is to help those who face the biggest barriers to employment, help find those jobs. And so these professionals are working across the state. They work a lot with students as well on pre-employment training, which is really, I think, exciting. And they really focus on independent living, competitive, integrated employment. That's the tradition that we stand on top of in Minnesota and is really important to our state. Next is services for the blind. This focuses specifically on those who are blind, deafblind, and losing vision. It gives tools and trainings that those who are blind can live independently. And it does a lot of really innovative nation-leading work in helping people access content they couldn't otherwise access. The department's radio talking book is used by other departments across the country as a way to help books come alive for those who can't read. A really powerful department that during the pandemic helped a lot of seniors who were shut up in their home with nowhere to go and not able to see. So just a really important part of our department, and of course getting those who are blind jobs is job number one for us. Unemployment insurance you've already heard about today, and we've all gotten an education on this over the last 4 years, haven't we? I mean, my land, $15 billion put into the market by our department over the last 4 years that helped your constituents survive the biggest global pandemic in 100 years. And just grateful to that team. There's a lot I could say here, but we all know what this department exists to do is to help those who get dislodged from employment by no fault of their own. And again, this is kind of been becoming a theme, but as a proud steward of this agency, I'll just say again, an award-winning department, one of the top 5 in the country in terms of effectiveness. We could not have gotten through the pandemic without their work, and every day they're out there helping make sure people who don't have work can make ends meet while they're waiting for their next job. Lastly, disability determination services. This is an entirely federal funded program, but it essentially helps those who need to get Social Security benefits early, get them early, and also to get to wade themselves through times of disability through some of those federal benefits. So it is a federally funded program run by our department, about 42,000 claims done in 2021. This team has gotten so efficient that we actually were able to, through a unique arrangement with the federal government, loan ourselves out to the state of Michigan to help them make up on some of their case backlog last quarter because they were suffering from some challenges there. So just a really great team. Part of DEED, they are at a separate location in St. Paul, but we're moving them into our larger agency soon. So that's kind of the shape of the agency. There's some operations things. I won't get into all of those as well, but just wanted to end on a note of excitement and collaboration with all of you. We're going to do a lot together in these coming months, but I just want to say that our commitment to all of you is that we collaborate with you to grow our economy. That's our job. That's what we're here to do. We like to bring a yes and orientation to our work. There's going to be a lot of great ideas here. We have different ideas too. We want to bring a kind of yes and sensibility to where these ideas go and make sure we can get as much done we can this session as possible. You'll hear time and again, and in partnership with you, we really center equity in everything we do at DEED. Every team has a goal focused on equity that they use to stretch themselves to do things they haven't done before. And we recognize our imperfections and really pursue to have a more equitable economy. That's really the job of our agency. You read that report I mentioned before, government, the Governor's Council, and economic expansion. That was really the central theme of that report as well. We're going to be honest and transparent. We're going to do the best we can to achieve our mission. So, you know, we're grateful to get to work with you. A lot more ahead. I know this is just an early overview, but I love this opportunity to work with your committee. Look forward to meeting with you all in person, and thanks, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Well, let me say, that was impressive. That was impressive. It was clear and thoughtful, but I'm going to go around the committee just in case some folks have some questions. Senator Putnam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great to see you again, Commissioner Grove.
You
Ms.
too,
Dannon,
Senator.
it's nice to see you guys. Similar to what Senator Chair Champion just mentioned, I wanted to say how impressed I am with how thorough and yet insightful you were, and also that if you were to actually be in the Senate, given the speed and efficiency with which you spoke, we could be done by February. So if you think about changing occupations, that would be great. And again, I just want to say how glad I am to get to work with you again.
Thanks, Senator.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Senator Pratt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Commissioner Grove, nice to see you again.
You too, Senator. Yeah.
I want to disagree with Senator Putnam. I think Commissioner Grove would be much more useful in the House by speaking as fast.
Fair enough. I'll take that into consideration.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Well, there's nothing, we look forward to having robust discussion with you, Commissioner, and to, you know, talk about your vision and other things that we might do that will help make sure that we are strengthening our workforce and our businesses through training and opportunities, and even supporting those folks who we want to, you know, get working independently, whether they are, you know, operating with a disability or not, right? So we are committed to that. So if there's nothing else, I do believe that we can, you know, leave early. But I will say thank you for your work and time today. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, January 11th, and we plan to hear from a number of different other folks, and we're also confirming what bills we're going to hear, because there might be some shuffling of a couple things. So make sure that you continue to look at your emails, and if you have any questions, let me know. Senator Drahan.
Thank you, Chair. Couple things real quick. I think I had someone mention they had a hard time signing up to testify. So if we could look at what we're doing on the back end there, just to make sure all the people have the opportunity to be heard. And then on the bill on Wednesday, do we know what other committees that's going to after the fact?
You know, paid family and medical leave, especially if we hear it on Wednesday, because there's some questions around timing, but in the event that we do hear it, there's a number of places that it needs to go from here, right? So there's, it touches a number of different committees. Tom Melton, perhaps you want to answer that question.
Senator, it'll for sure go to labor, but it's going to need to go to, I think, 6 or 7 other committees, and maybe council could talk about the committees that it has to go to.
Mr. Chair, members, and Senator Durham, yes, labor, I know it has some rulemaking, so it has to go to state government, some data privacy, so it would have to go, and some new liens and penalties, so it would have to go to judiciary, probably commerce for some of the private plan issues, health. So it really does touch on quite a few topics. So yes, it'd have 6 or 7 stops, as Mr. Melton mentioned.
Thank you.
If nothing else, Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to follow up on the floor discussion that we had regarding proportionality of the committee, encouraging you. It was you and I worked together over the last 4 years. We managed this committee on a 1-vote margin, and this is a committee, I think, that for the people of Minnesota, for the type of work that we do, is so important that we have that that bipartisan of working together, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping the majority is still taking a look at proportionality. And Mr. Chair, I would just like to remind you of our working relationship during that time, how we operated the committee, and that you will look favorably on making this committee as we did under a similar split in the chamber, more proportional to the chamber itself.
So thank you for that question. So specifically to that, yes, we are continuing to look at that. The majority leader and others are looking at those things, and I hope to have an answer later on today. We are always committed to fairness and really making sure that we have adequate representation. As you know, especially with this committee, I like to make sure that we have a full representation of what we can do to help folks across our state. So to have as many diverse, I wanted to use a word like diverse and reasonable voices at the table is always helpful. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think we could achieve your objective by adding one more member of the minority onto the committee. I'm not suggesting somebody leave. I'm just suggesting that we bring on so that we have a better representation of the diverse ideologies that we have within this chamber. And again, as I talked to Senator Dietzich, she's working with the chairs. She's leaving some of that discretion to the chairs. I'm appealing to you to look back on the last 4 years as a guide rather than going back to other years when maybe we didn't do as well as we should have.
I totally get it. Thank you so much for your kind words there. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned until Wednesday, January 11th at 12:30. And you will get an agenda by the close of business day on Thursday. Have a great day. The committee is adjourned.